Welcome back, guys, to yet another episode of the RPCoaching Podcast. I'm here today with another giant in the industry, Mr. Steve Morgan himself, who is someone I have trained with for many years and someone whose opinion I value greatly. So, Steve, welcome to the RPCoaching Podcast. Just give the guys a quick intro about yourself, what it is you do, and give them a kind of taster of who you are.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. Great to be here. And thanks for that great intro. I'm a personal trainer and a sports therapist and have been in the industry for close on 20 years now. I have been a sports therapist for about 15 of those years. And I work with a lot of people from anyone from beginner fitness up to Olympic athletes and pro bodybuilders. So hopefully got a lot of experience with loads of different body types and loads of different mechanics.
Well, we'd hope so. That's the reason I've got him on the podcast. Now, it's worth saying, if you didn't know, I also do sports massage. We are both trained in sports therapy, so that is kind of one of the things we're going to focus on today. And one of the things we're going to cover in this podcast is the impacts of a sedentary job and the impacts that it's having on your health. We're going to explore why you're in so much pain, what causes the issues, and we're going to kind of look at a case study of a typical client and see how we can start to fight back and how we can start to look after yourself, more importantly. So let's get started. Now, the type of client me and Steve deal with as sports therapists most commonly are the kind of office jobs, the desk jobs. Steve, what are the kind of common clients that you would bump into?
Well, a lot of the time people come and see me with back issues, so lower back issues or upper trap issues, basically, where they're either getting a lot of pain through the lumbar spine, or they're getting like stress-induced or tension headaches and a lot of sort of shoulder pain, basically, because of a lot of different reasons. But yeah, those are the ones I tend to see, just because of the sedentary work and commuting.
So one of the big things that we deal with a lot of the time is bad back. Now, there are a number of other related illnesses and sort of issues. To name a few: flat back syndrome, hyperkyphosis, upper trap tension, internally rotating shoulders, which leads to tension headaches, stress headaches. Honestly, the list is endless. Yep. But we're going to just focus on two of the major issues that we see day in, day out in the sports massage line of work and also the personal training or the coaching side of work. Yep. So let's take number one. Steve, adaptive shortening of the hamstrings and lack of glute activation. Just kind of give the guys a bit of an introduction as to what that is.
Okay, so for people that commute into work but then sat at desks all day, you've got to think of the position of the hamstring you're putting in. The leg's bent most of the day, which means that the hamstring is actually in its shortened form.
Yeah, sure.
So when you see someone with that, they basically, the time that it's been under that shortened period of time, the muscle gets used to being in that position. And if it gets used to being in that position, that's the position it gets comfortable being. Now, when that happens, you can cause a lot of other knock-on effects from that. If you get too tight through your hamstrings, you can tilt your pelvis, your hip flexors get too tight, or go the other way and too loose in some cases, and just not working synergistically, the muscles, and then often leads to lower back pain.
Yeah, which is, lower back pain in a nutshell is caused by probably 101 other things.
Yeah, it could be another
than just the back itself. Yeah. One of the big things that we're used to hearing is, or someone coming for therapy saying, yeah, it's all in my back, please can you massage my back? Chances of it actually being back related, I would probably throw it out there and say is maybe under 10%.
Yeah, that's exactly what I said.
Because there are so many other issues going on around the periphery and the kind of, I guess, where the pain comes to light is in the lower back.
Yeah.
So adaptive shortening of the hamstrings, again, this comes down to that time that we spend sitting down day after day, hour after hour, especially on the commute as well. I mean, people forget to factor in the commute. Let's take a normal day. So you wake up in bed, you've been sleeping all night. The time that you spend walking around is minimal because you've got up late, you've missed your alarm.
Rush.
You jump on the train or in the car. So again, I don't know how long the average commute is. I'd probably say 40 minutes to an hour.
Yeah, if you're going to London from around here,
or
an hour plus.
Or average, on average. Then you get into work, you catch up with your mates, you sit down at your desk, you sat there from, again, let's just take a normal 9 to 5, you sat there from 9 till 12, half 12. Lunch break is a quick trip to the shops. When you're back, you sat down again from just, again, 1 till 4:30 when you start to pack up. Get yourself, try and be the first out the office. 5 o'clock, you're back on that 40-minute to an hour commute. You get home, first thing you do, sit in front of the sofa, sit in front of the sofa and watch the fabric. Sit in front of the telly on the sofa before going to bed. So you take that day, the movement in that day is actually quite scary. The minimal movement that people do. So moving on, I guess let's look at a little bit of the science behind what causes the adaptive shortening of the hamstring. So we've talked about sitting down. There are a few other muscles which are involved as well. So the psoas and inactive glutes. Steve, talk to us about glutes, the peach, the arse. Give us some indication of what's going on there.
Okay, so there's two common muscles that end up having to get treated for in the glutes. First of all, if they get too tight, glute med and piriformis, again, kind of 90% of the time are the root of the cause of the problem. You've got the nerves, obviously, that come out from the spine, go down the legs, and often people get what's sciatica, pain emanating down. Now, that can go up as well, so you can actually feel it in the lower back. So if your glute med or piriformis is too tight, you can get that sort of lumbar pain or stress in the back. So that is an issue. Being too tight needs to be addressed. Okay, so we need to work on something. We'll touch on that later of what you can do to help yourself. But if they're not activating properly as well, they don't give you stability through the pelvis.
Sure.
If you haven't got stability through the pelvis, along with the core as well, then you're putting too much stress on your lower back. So two slightly different issues, but both caused by almost the same thing.
And again, piriformis, they're probably one of the big words in this podcast.
It's the forgotten muscle.
Yeah, I would advise everybody to Google it, have a look at it, and look at how to release it via YouTube. Piriformis self-release. It is such an easy thing to solve, but when left untreated can cause havoc on sciatica, back pain. It's that generally I would say is probably the stem or the root of the cause. Now, one of the next issues we bump into quite a lot is, again, a shortening of the traps. Steve.
Okay, so upper traps, basically the top of our shoulders and leading into the neck. So that muscle, basically, again, like the hamstrings, if you put it in a shortened state for a long period of time, is going to get used to being in that position and that's its comfortable position to stay in. Now, if your setup is not correct at work, so if your desk basically is too high and your shoulders are elevated and you're typing all day looking at a screen with kind of hunched shoulders, if you want to call it that,
sure, yeah.
They're basically put in a short position. Now, if you're constantly tight through there, the traps lead up to the occipitals, which is basically the base of the skull. Now, if you get too tight through there, very often what we see is people getting headaches, basically, which are like tension headaches right across the front and around the eyebrows, basically front of the head, the forehead.
Yeah.
Now that
I think it's around the temples, isn't it?
Around the temples.
All that
area. So often, if we need to release those upper traps, give them a little bit more flexibility, a little bit more basically into the comfortable position where they want to be in their long elongated form, which takes that stress. out of the occipital, so you can release that sort of stress headache.
Yeah, I mean, stress headaches are becoming more and more of an issue. Again, with the clients that we see, I'm sure so many people listening to this podcast or this episode have been through it, or know a partner or a friend or family who is always, my head, I feel like my head's going to blow up.
Feels like a migraine sometimes.
Yeah, or, a stressful day behind the computer. You get home and there's that just, oh my God, I need to release that tension through the head. And again, 9 times out of 10, it doesn't stem in the head. It stems from the periphery, neck, shoulders, tight chest.
Yeah.
And this, I mean, if we look at these two issues together, I remember when I used to do my training years ago, it was the kind of the Donald Duck syndrome, or the Hunchback of Notre Dame. You can kind of spot the posture from a long way away. You can see someone who's holding tension in their upper body, in their traps. The shoulders are pronounced, they're elevated, the hips are slightly tilted so the bum sticks out. If you look for it and you know what you're looking for, you can spot it a mile away. But yeah, stress headaches and tension headaches are another massive cause of the shortening of the traps.
Yeah.
So they're kind of 2 big points. I mean, the list is endless when it comes to muscles that are affected due to certain postural imbalances. So I just want to quickly touch on the pecs as well, so the chest.
Yep.
Because obviously what we get is the shoulders rounding forward, the chest becoming too tight due to sitting in that desk position.
Yep.
Anything you want to add there?
So it's also down to someone that's not at a desk as well, driving position. Now, as Ross has quite rightly said, the pecs basically have a huge role to play in this, because if they're too tight, and you're too tight through pec minor and pec major as well, but mostly pec minor, we get that internal rotation of the shoulder. So we're getting those rounded shoulders coming forward. Now that can be, yes, driving position in here, but again, working at a computer all day, especially a computer which is quite narrow. So if you're on like a laptop, but really close, we're getting, our hands are coming really in tight here. And then throw in the bad posture of the desk not being the right height and your setup not being right, you're going to start causing yourself some problems. So it's adaptive shortening again of the pec minor. Yeah,
and one thing we're going to cover now is how to address these points, but it's not something that can be taken lightly. There tends to be a lot of clients we see who just think you can come for a quick massage, everything's going to be fixed, and then you can have another 10 years of no pain, pain-free, and carry on. This is a continuous work of progress. 100%. If you look at the amount of hours, let's just say in an average week you spend in that position versus the amount of hours you spend stretching, well, I'm going to throw it out there and say you don't even do stretching, let alone 10 minutes, let alone an hour. Yeah. We have to fight aggressively to counteract the imbalances, because that's why, as the kind of population ages, with these new desk jobs and things, there are so many issues now with back, with health, with postural imbalances.
Yeah, we want to stay as upright or as anatomical position as best we possibly can for our whole life. I've got a real weird, and if you don't mind me saying this analogy, that we're basically like flowers at the end of the day, because we are born in fetal position, so we're like in a seed and basically all curled up. Then we grow and we stand up tall, and we're good for most of our life, hopefully until 60s, 70s, 80s. But then we start kind of withering and dying and come back down.
Well, Steve, you might be a flower, but I am a great oak tree.
Yeah, I'm a little dangerous compared to that. But yeah, it's that thought process is we need to stay as upright as we possibly can for as long as possible. So good posture, so we can keep active. We can be as healthy as we possibly can, and reduce our pain as we're older, because we only get worse as we're older, as we unfortunately degenerate.
Yeah. Wilt away.
Yes.
Wilt away.
Yeah, we are the flowers. Right.
So, all of that's been quite negative. All of that has been quite real and raw. Without diving too much into the science, because I'm well aware that most of you don't even know where your quads are. Most of you don't even know where your biceps are. So there's no point talking about all of these kind of anatomical things in great detail. We can go on to that if you request it. But moving off the negatives, let's look at how can we address the issues. What can you do to help yourself? It's worth saying this is not just for office workers.
It's for anyone.
It's for anyone who feels that they need to be a little bit more active, who lives a sedentary lifestyle. But we will use an office job at the moment to just cover a few points. So, Steve, kick us off. I'm a cripple, I'm busted, I can't move. What can I do to help myself?
Okay, right. First and foremost, if you're suffering from any of those kind of things that we've described, is look at your setup at work. Because if you are doing a 9-to-5 job, I mean, that's a lot of hours that you're doing, as you touched on earlier. So first of all, make sure that your computer and your desk is ergonomically or is set up biomechanically nicely for you. So you need to play around with the desk height if you can do that. If not, you need to play around with the height of the seat and make sure it's a good postural seat with good lumbar support.
Yeah.
So you are playing around with those positions to make them progress you in the right direction of having less kyphosis, less getting your hands in close. Try and make sure that your shoulders are dropped and you're actually controlling your shoulders when you're typing. And that would be my number one place to start with, because you can't get away from using the computer. You've got to, for most people's jobs, be in front of it most of the day.
Yeah.
But then I would say, so after you've done the posture setup, got that sorted, is then thinking about taking minor breaks. Like I would then move on to something like, my rule of thumb is if you can do it, is never sit down for more than 20 minutes, never stand up for more than 20 minutes if you possibly can. I mean, that's not a given, it's not possible for most people. But if you can have little factored in breaks, however you want to do it, whether it's just take a little walk over, go and make yourself a coffee, or if you're having a water break or a loo break, or getting something from the photocopy machine, or I think you said something earlier that we talked about setting your alarm.
Yeah, that's a big one. I mean, some people have bought some fancy sound timers. There are some online which are, I think they're 20-minute intervals. And it just encourages people to get up and move every 20 minutes. I think there was a big study that was rolled out that said after 20 minutes, your focus drops at a rapid period every so many minutes after.
Yeah, so it becomes more productive.
It's well within your interests to get yourself up. And I'm not talking about leaving early. I'm not talking about running a home, spending even more time on technology with blue light and stuff. I'm just talking about getting out of your chair, moving around, even just doing a few quick squats in the canteen, or like Steve said, going to get water. Going to get water actually is a you can kill two birds with one stone, because the more you drink, the more you need to wee. So you can actually then go nip to the toilet and nip back. You've ultimately ticked off two of the boxes. But setting an alarm, if you haven't got a sound timer, is an amazing idea. Every hour, every 30 minutes, just to give yourself a little reminder.
Yeah. I'll just say one thing with the water as well is killing almost 3 birds with one stone, because obviously we'll touch on it, but it's so good obviously for fat loss as well, and you've probably done other podcasts on that. But not only that, is sometimes with the headaches, if it's not a tension headache, it might be a dehydration headache.
Bang.
So boom, straight away you've got the 2 birds killed with one stone on that. So get that water in you, use that to maybe counteract it in 2 ways. So if it's a tension, you nailed that by stretching or whatever we go through, get your set up. But also that dehydration headache of that, stay hydrated. Yeah,
that's so important. And one thing I always advise my clients is with these big, you can get these big 2-3 litre jugs now. Some come with times on. If I haven't, just buy a 2 litre bottle for like 80 pence in your local supermarket with a Sharpie, just write on there 8 a.m, 9 a.m, 10 a.m, give yourself little targets, just so when it is sat on the desk and it's 4 o'clock and you haven't even drank your intake for 8 a.m, shit's hit the fan, you need to pull your fucking finger out. So, water. One big thing again, which I know Steve will be big on, what with, again, his clients that he trains and competitors, is steps. When you sat down for long periods of time, you get very few steps in. So on those lunch breaks, get yourself up, out, get yourself some fresh air. Even if it's chucking it down with rain, the mental release that you can take from just 30 minutes, 60 minutes away from your screen is going to do you wonders, not only mentally, but also physically as well. So, anything else?
Yeah, so another thing, obviously, to try and fix it. So you've done your posture setup, you've given yourself little breaks, you're moving around. We now need to address the issue outside. So you need to start thinking about a good stretching routine at home. Now, people just do not stretch enough. And with that stretching, throwing in things like myofascial release, whether it be foam rolling, to treat yourself with that, iron out some of the issues going on in the muscles, but also regular treatment. Now, if you don't want to be able to work optimally, you need to have good flexibility, good mobility. Now, invest in yourself.
I'm just going to pause right there. Yeah. This is now a sales pitch.
Hey.
So,
Yeah.
we're not
trying to sell.
Two massage therapists preaching massage.
But like I say this to a lot of people, like you've got to invest in yourself to get the best out of yourself. But
sure.
Injury prevention is much easier than cure. So why not invest in yourself so you can train optimally, or just be healthy for someone that's going to the office and be able to stay and work and not have to have time off for back issues or neck issues, but so you can actually reap the benefits, be better mechanically. So try and force yourself to either go for a deep tissue sports massage, or seek advice from someone that can give you a routine. Yeah. But it should all go in hand. So your training needs to be set up for correcting the postural deficiencies or mechanical issues that you have, imbalances. Also, then the treating the muscles to keep them. If you're wanting to grow muscle, you've got to keep it ironed out so you can actually recruit more muscle fiber and grow some. Yeah. But for every reason, it's good to throw in there. But for one of the most important reasons, I say with athletes, a trainer, is to basically make sure that they can continue getting better and stay injury free.
Yeah, that's the big thing, especially because we're after longevity. We're after good health. No one wants a 2-year season and then they're game over. So it is all about longevity and health. I mean, most of us, we're living longer, but we have to ensure that we take the precautions and the measures to get there, rather than spending 17 years of your life at an office job and then for the next 27 years, you're busted with all these issues that could have been prevented. And it's worth saying, I mean, one thing I hear a lot is sports massage is too painful. Whilst it is painful, yes, if you are using the correct therapist who understands the body, there is an element of pain, yes. I'm not going to lie, it does hurt. But there is a therapist who understands dynamics and how these kind of muscles work to make you leave feeling 10 times better, not even more damaged.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big thing, is understanding your therapist and maybe looking into and doing a bit of research.
Yeah, because it's no point in going into a session and being tickled.
Yeah. And again, that's what it comes down to, finding the right therapist for you, which actually is a good idea for another podcast that's just sprung to mind now. But if you are someone who enjoys and has a pain threshold, then you need someone who can apply the pressure. If you're someone who gets tickled and wants to scream in pain, maybe sports massage is not for you, but there are other ways around it. So finding the right therapist for you. And lastly, I just want to add in, just while we're on the topic of trying to help yourself, if you are driving or commuting to work, park furthest away from the office, get the steps in, even if it's raining. Stop being a little bitch, put your raincoat on, get in the office, get the steps done. Don't take the elevator. Take the elevator. Take the stairs every time. Go up and down a few times a day. But guys, I hope that podcast has been informative. I'm hoping you've taken something from it. Stay tuned. Steve, thank you so much for jumping on.
Thanks for having me.
There is definitely a lot more episodes that I'll be doing with Steve, with creating more content for whatever you guys want. But thank you so much. Stay tuned, and I will catch you on the flip side.